Greetings. It has come to the attention of the Air Force Command that there is room for improvement in the area of VFR and IFR airfield navigation. In response, we are launching a 4-part series designed to educate and empower pilots and other crew members, ensuring that they remain a proficient and formidable fighting force for years to come. Today's episode will focus on non-precision approaches, providing a comprehensive guide on how to execute them effectively on Uslantcom missions and training servers.
To start off, what is a precision versus non-precision approach? A precision approach is an instrument approach and landing using precision lateral and vertical guidance, whereas a non-precision standard instrument approach procedure only provides horizontal guidance. Today we will be discussing the latter. Precision approach types include the ILS, PAR, and GLSS, although in DCS, we really only have to worry about the ILS. Non-precision approach types include the VOR, DME, localizer, TACAN, and all GPS approaches. Pretty much every approach that isn't an ILS is a non-precision approach, as they either aren't accurate enough, like GPS approaches, or do not provide vertical guidance at all, like TACAN or localizer approaches. We will be looking in detail into TACAN approaches today, as they will be the most common non-precision approaches we will encounter. This is the non-precision approach plate we will be looking at today. The VOR runway 21 approach into Vuojari, Finland. There's a high likelihood you will fly this approach in the near future, so it is a good idea to get familiarized with this approach plate. Approach plates are broken up into 5 primary sections: the briefing info, the MSA, the plan view, the profile view, and the landing minimums. Let's start at the top. Here we have the airport identifier and the airport name. On the opposite side, we have the location of the airport followed by the approach type, the VOR runway 21. In the briefing area, we have our highest MDA listed, our common traffic advisory frequency, our TACAN and VOR frequencies, and our airport elevation. Next, we have our missed approach instructions, but we'll get more into that later. And next we have the notes sections denoting other important information regarding the airport and the approach. This is the minimum safe altitude section that denotes the minimum altitude at which it is safe to fly within 25 nautical miles of the Vuojari VOR. This gives us at least 1,000 feet of clearance from any obstacles between the designated radials. So here we can see the 340 and the 130 radial on the northeast side of the Vuojari VOR. Our MSA is 2,500 feet. The southeast side of the MSA is 1,500 feet where the ground elevation is lower. Here we have our plan view that gives us a vertical top-down view of what the approach looks like. This will also give us information regarding the topography of the surrounding areas. As you can see, there is a hill nearly 1,500 feet tall at approximately 12 DME on the approach. Pilots should take into account and exercise heightened vigilance on that section of the approach. Here we also get a visualization of our missed approach procedure. Here we can see that once we hit our missed approach point, we will be climbing to 1500 on runway heading, and once we reach 1500 we will initiate a left climbing turn to a heading of 030 to intercept the 076 degree radial from the Vuojari VOR. We will fly outbound until reaching intruder at 13 DME and hold at 5000 right-hand turns. The plan view also gives us a visualization of the runway configuration and the VOR TACAN in relation to the runway position for our situational awareness. Here we have our profile view, which gives us a horizontal altitude visualization of the approach. This is important for us on a non-precision approach because it gives us our step-down altitudes. As you can see, Viking at 15 DME is to be crossed at 5,000, Extender at 10 DME is 3,500, Strato at 7 DME is 2,700, and Pegasus at 4 DME is at 1,700. The numbers at the bottom of the profile view indicate the DME between the two nearest fixes, and the M indicates the missed approach point, which is directly over the vortex in this particular case, meaning as soon as you get the to from flag flip on your CDI or HSI, you should begin your missed approach segment. Additionally, the Maltese cross found only on non-precision approaches indicates which fix is the final approach fix. Generally, as a rule of thumb, the Air Force recommends being established in landing configuration at least a mile before the final approach fix. Finally, our landing minimum section denotes the minimums of your aircraft. The leftmost number indicates the minimum descent altitude, which is an altitude in MSL. The middle number, in parentheses, indicates the minimum descent height, which is the MDA in AGL. And finally, the last number indicates the visibility requirements to attempt the approach. The aircraft we are flying today is the F-16 Fighting Falcon for the 157th Fighter Squadron, so our MDA would be 1,200 feet MSL, 419 feet AGL, and our visibility requirements would have to be 1.5 statute miles. Let's get into what minimums are. On a non-precision approach, like we're looking at today, you have your minimum descent altitude, whereas on a precision approach, which we will look at on another episode, you have a decision altitude. On a non-precision approach like today's TACAN approach, you can descend to the MDA after passing the final approach fix and any step-down fixes. There is no vertical guidance on these approaches. Once reaching the MDA, you'd level off and continue along until you've had the required visual references to make a landing or until you reached the missed approach point and had to execute a missed approach. Now, on precision approaches, you have your DA. DA, or decision altitude, is found published on approaches with vertical guidance like an ILS. This approach has a glide slope to give vertical guidance along the approach course, while an MDA is like a floor you level off at and continue along until you see the runway or have to go missed. You don't level off on a decision altitude. Once you reach this altitude, you must either decide to continue the approach if the visual references are there, or fly the missed approach immediately. This is why it's called a decision altitude. On approaches with the DA, the missed approach point is the place where the DA intersects the glide slope. DAs are typically lower than MDAs because of the precise vertical guidance they send out. Now let's go fly this approach. Alright, so now that we're in the aircraft, we can go through our ABCs. This is an uncontrolled field with neither an ATIS or an AWA, so we can move to B. The build section. Here we will build the approach by setting the frequency and the course. Be sure to verify that you have the right ground station by either listening to the Morse code identifier and matching it with the Morse code on the chart, or, if your aircraft has it, by observing that the Morse code decoder on your display matches the 3-letter identifier on the ground station listed on the chart. Alright, so now we can move on to the brief section of the approach. As you already know, there are 5 seconds to an approach plate: the briefing info, the MSA, the plan view, the profile view, and the landing minima. Personally, I like to start on the top and work down from there. So in the briefing info section, we have our CTAF frequency, which we need to make sure we're on, of 122.3, and a TECAN frequency we already confirmed we were on, of 122 X-ray. Airport elevation 781 feet, missed approach on runway heading, climb to 1500, then climbing left turn to 5000 on a heading of 030, and outbound on the VJI VOR radial 076 to intruder DME 13, and hold to 5000. In the notes section, looks like the approach is not authorized at night because there are no lights. Caution recently landing aircraft on the road. I'm guessing that's because there isn't any taxiways to pull off of at this airport/road. And in the MSA section, on the northeastern side of the airport, we have an MSA of 2,500, which is where we are operating now, from the 340 to the 130 radial of VJI. I'm guessing that's because the mountain 10 miles to the northwest of the airport. On the southwestern side, it's 1,500. The MSA gives us at least 1,000 feet of vertical clearance from any obstacle. Looks like we're going to be crossing Viking at 5,000 at 15 DME, stepping down to 3,500 at 10 DME, 2,700 at 7 DME, and 1,700 at 4 DME for approximately 318 foot per minute, 318 foot per nautical mile descent. Finally, we have our landing minimums. For the aircraft I'm flying now, our minimum will be 1,200 feet MSL or 419 feet AGL with a 1.5 statute mile visibility requirement. Alright, so here we are at the beginning of the VOR 21 approach into Vuojarvi at 5,000. Once we reach Viking at 15 DME, we'll begin our step-down descent to 3,500. This is also where it's advisable to run your approach checklist specific to your aircraft. Alright, there we are at 15 DME, starting our descent now into the final approach fix extender. Fuji traffic, Noble 11, Viking, VOR 21, Fuji traffic. On instrument approaches, you should be sitting up or already set up at the final approach fix, meaning gear down and flap set. On this particular approach, extender is the final approach fix. This can be determined by noting the Maltese cross under the fix. We will be aiming to cross extender at 230 knots indicated and at or above 3,500 feet. Once crossing extender, I'll swing down the gear and enter the landing configuration. Alright, here we are coming up on extender, going to be swinging down the gear and entering landing config. Fuji traffic, Noble 11, final approach, fix, VOR 21, Fuji traffic. Looks like our next step down is Strato at 7 DME, and we'll be crossing that at or above 2,700. As we approach the missed approach point, we'll want to verify our MDA, which looks like for us will be 1,200 feet MSL and 419 feet AGL. Alright, pressing Strato down to Pegasus DME 4 at 1,700. Alright, now that we've passed Pegasus, we're free to descend to our MDA, which for us is 1,200 feet. If we don't have the runway in sight by this missed approach point, we'll have to execute the missed. Fuji traffic, Noble 11, short final, 21, Fuji. 200 feet above MDA. 100 feet. Alright, there's the runway in sight. Alright. Final checks, 3 green, light set, runway environment, clear and in sight. Fuji traffic, Noble 11, half mile final, 21, Fuji. That's a relief. Almost thought we weren't going to break out of the clouds there in time.